starting with notes on designing with others, I purposely didn't put ethically because I'm still learning and I don't know if I can answer with that. So hopefully there's some ethics involved. So what I'm presenting here today is it's a rather new project that I'm using this project for some of the reflections that I might contribute here. So this is a project that we started very recently with the Brooklyn Public Library, and what I'm sharing here today is actually ideas related to this paper that I just finished with a couple of colleagues. I just want to name them: Laura Penn and John Bruce, Barbara Adams, and Mariana Motulo. So this is something that is ongoing, and this is one of the first time we are presenting. So I'm dividing this presentation in three parts, very short parts. The first one is contextualizing what the project is about. The second one in relation to some of the learnings that we had so far, and concluding with some of these notes about the ethics or the role of design in this evolving space of designing in the social or for public interest. So just a quick note. So this is a map of the Greater New York City area. We are working with the Brooklyn Public Library, which is one of the systems, library systems that we have in New York that remain after the city was consolidated as one largest city. So, but the library in Brooklyn is one of the largest in the country, and we have currently in the city only in Brooklyn 59 branches. The important thing is that happening with Brooklyn Public Library is that very recently, basically less than a year ago, they decided to launch a new strategic plan, really rethinking and reorienting their role as libraries. This is not new in library work. I think there are a lot of libraries that are rethinking their initial mission, but in particular in Brooklyn, they are speaking of renewing their commitment to become a form of participation, and where each branch acts as a de facto community center to effectively serve the needs of its patrons, particularly the most vulnerable and precarious situations. So here, the library is taking a very strong position of calling themselves or the branches as community hubs, providing resources to support personal advancement, building civic engagement, and strengthen the fabric of the community. So they're working basically in networks. They're thinking as reacting to each of these neighborhoods that they are in a particular way, and they are really kind of revisiting everything related to what they're calling outreach services, which goes beyond of providing information and knowledge and books. So offering specialized information, assistance and programming, and in this case for the underserved, including immigrants, veterans, older adults, and people experiencing homelessness. A crucial part of this plan and the group that we were working in this project is addressing issues of incarceration and post-incarceration, which impacts Brooklyn residents at some of the highest rates and incidents in the New York metropolitan area. Last winter, where we had this federal prison or federal jail in Brooklyn, where they incarcerated people stayed for 3 or 4 days without heating during the highest peak of the winter. So this is a very crucial thing in the U.S., and in New York is not distant from this. So BPL is involved with that and is projecting itself as an effective support of what they call re-entry programs, which is the process by which the recently incarcerated are released and returned to the community. So we call returned citizens, right? By facilitating access to information and regarding re-entry. So BPL is not new to this kind of work. They've been pioneering a set of unique services in that space. I think some of them are not very different from what you have in the UK, from what I've been learning from Lorraine and her work. So they range from assisting people finding employment and housing referrals, substance abuse treatment, support, family therapy, and educational vocational training, just to name a few. They also have, what they call the library's jail-based systems, so that include the traditional book lending, as well as new programs called the Daddy and Mommy, or Daddy and Me, or Mommy and Me, which enable the incarcerated parents to stay involved with their children's literacy development. And also Tell a Story, which is a free televisiting service based in the branches that enables family members to stay connected with their loved ones in detention centers. So in that context, BPL invited us at the Tesis Lab to understand the unique perceptions and needs of this and aspirations of those patrons that could benefit their understanding of how they move forward with what they're calling the re-entry services. So in end of last year, basically, we started with this kind of multi-pronged methodological approach that include a large amount of ethnography and the traditional co-design sessions that made us arrive to some preliminary recommendations for how the library could rethink or start thinking their services in relation to the larger strategic plan. So we are currently in this phase 1 of the project, and we started with one single branch in the neighborhood of Bed-Stuy, which is a north central portion of Brooklyn. Something interesting about this branch in particular that is very close to the Bedford Armored Men Assessment Shelter, which is a place where a lot of the people live in prison end up being in neighborhood. So it creates this direct flow of people into the libraries, particularly in the first hours of the day. So there's this what you call this rush hour that with a completely different type of patrons coming to this particular branch. So we started doing the shadowing of librarians. We spent time at the front desk. We stay in their shared office, organize activities, open house events, special programs, and participated with community groups and partner agencies in that process. So although the emphasis and when we started to do the ethnography was related to the incarceration in particular and as central to the project, we allow this open inquiry to go to other areas, and it shows again and again that the libraries is intervening much more than in other services and functioning as a resource in itself and starting to forge more connections between libraries and other service providers. So this is the sort of what you see in the slide is a first framework that we started to create, and just to give a sense of where we are going in this project, we were thinking of the site, the library, as a form of space of radical hospitality, where we're finding there's an ethos of trust and expanded care, along with the exchange of knowledge across these different power differentiated groups. And we're trying to, the staff, and the patrons playing a completely shifting roles originally imagined by the library. So we found that, for instance, the staff is really engaging much beyond what they originally tasked. So we have staff members who are, learning to engage with patrons by, meeting their basic needs in ways that were not programmed. So we have staff reacting to people that are falling in the ground or taking them to prepare their CVs and addressing things that were not really imagined. At the same time, we see patrons that are not only patrons, but they are becoming part of this infrastructure. They are not traditional volunteers, but they are in the library actively participating in the room. So on the top, we see this person who comes every day to the library and starts, engaging with child and giving them classes on different subjects, and they're supporting thereafter masterclass program. So this is becoming a complete different set of directions that we want to explore in the next phase of the project. 3 points I want to make in relation to aspects of ethics that we've been finding in this process, and it reflects a little bit on the chapter that I wrote for the book. So the first one is that we started the project calling that this phase of the project was called discovery, and although the discovery is the language used by many designers to explain how they acquire first-hand experience in the challenges, opportunities, and capabilities experienced by the various stakeholders, we find, not as a surprise, the language to be controversial and a need for change and clarification. So we decided not to adhere or to stick to the understanding that there's a word out that is there, that is independent of us, that can be unearthed through research and design. So colonizing projects repeatedly make claims to have discovered people, places, and resources, which of course were already active in meaningful sites. So our use of discovery here, or not use of the discovery, rejects this understanding and recognize struggles, and with the fact that our vantage point is unavoidable, situated, and as such that we are able to see is neither complete or stable. The second point, and this is sort of a collage of some of the activities. This is part of the ethnography, the co-design, and we have one of the staff in the middle of the slide. So we are thinking as this design approach, recognizing participants as keenly reflexive and knowledgeable, and we invite them to experiment collaboratively with the conventions of this ethnography and inquiry. So participants are not tokens of their cultures to be systematically understood, where they are agents who actively participate in shaping emerging social realms and are treated like partners in the research. So here we start to see some shift where the interviewed want to be the interviewer, and we are starting to think how this is affecting our work. So in delegating, there's another point which we found very important, which we started to think about how to shift the role. So in delegating the voice to designers, policymakers, and administrators, people transfer power, and this can result in a relationship of reliance and natural collaboration, while a delegate or representative is often needed for a group to articulate its position and needs. Certainly our social and political systems and institutions often demand this. Speaking in place of someone else expresses a complex dynamic of privilege, authority, and access. We've been questioning our authority as designers, as researchers, to be in the place doing this work. And we start to see some of these roles shifting. So finally, the final point I want to make is as designers, we need to see people in all their complexity, versus an allegorized population to be assessed. Rather than efforts to help or empower, we must develop relationships where resources and knowledge are exchanged, emphasizing how to harness and amplify the knowledge from below, in this case from the staff and from patrons, flipping the direction in which the knowledge normally flows as an exchange rather than a transaction. In our opinion, in the work we're doing, this increases the visibility of a variety of actors and their experiences, which can cultivate a new sense of dignity. Thank you.